Hi, my name's Steve Gaskin. I was formerly a Detective Chief Inspector in the Metropolitan Police Service, and I'm retired now, and I will bore you with what I'm doing in retirement. It's so kind of you to invite me along to Freshers. It's a shame I can't participate in half a lager, which I don't do anymore. But I've got a presentation for you just to talk to you about my career in the police service, which was absolutely fantastic. But what I thought I'd do is to just go through that career. And then what I'm going to do is just to talk to you about the law on murder, just so you can start focusing your mind. And it's straight out of the Detective Training School manual. That's one of the things I do in retirement is I do teach detectives. So let's start with this. And I do hope you can see everything here. Let's make sure that we can share everything. And here we go. So I'm just going to talk this through with you, and we will just see where we go. So my career in the police is called In the Line of Duty, my career in the police. Let's take away this top bit, see if I can get rid of this. That's cool. So here we go. Here we go. My name's Steve. As I say, I was formerly a DCI in the Met. I'm currently the advisor to BBC Silent Witness, and I'm also a fellowship of the Institute of Leadership and Management. What does that mean? My entire life now is dedicated to trying to get the best, really the best out of people. And in fairness, that's what some of my bosses, sergeants, inspectors, chief inspectors got out of me in the police service. So some of the cases that I've been involved in, really interesting. Within 18 months of joining the police service, I was involved I was on like work experience with the CID, and a serial murder broke, and I was actually manning the phones, and I managed to get this guy to come and give himself up. So and that was my last time in uniform. I was interesting case, the Sultan of Brunei, who at the time was one of the richest men in the world, and he was being blackmailed, and I ran an operation. We managed to get an undercover police officer in there to bring the case to fruition. There's a guy called Johnny Rotten. Some of you might remember him, some of you won't. He was in the Sex Pistols in the 70s, and I arrested Mr. Johnny Rotten, Johnny Linden, for trying to decapitate me with a ceremonial sword. Mercifully, I got out of the way quick enough. So I'm actually at the moment piecing together, even in retirement, 4 outstanding murders. And I'm doing that with a guy called Colin Sutton, who was a lawyer before we joined the police service. And the two, being a lawyer and the police service, do sit well together. So once you've got your degree, whether that's in policing or police studies or law, both of those will help you immeasurably when you either go into the police force or obviously the law. This particular case is being serialized on the TV, and I've just spent a very hot few days in the studio recording it with Sky TV. So I joined as a constable, as we all do. Now you can join as a direct entrant detective, and it's on that course that I'm teaching at the moment in London on behalf of the Metropolitan Police Service. It's great fun. Teaching young detectives is really actually a gift to me. Career CID officer, investigation at all levels, from shoplifting right the way through to terrorism, murder cases, serious drug trafficking. I kind of fell into that, particularly looking in the 80s about sequestration of assets. In other words, running a parallel inquiry to a serious drug trafficking case to see where the person was putting their money, and then giving the courts the opportunity to remove that money from them. Child protection policy, again, quite a diverse time of my life, and probably one of the most challenging, but very interesting, because I got to learn about the occupations and professions of the social services, education, and everything else that goes multi-agency with child protection. Training of colleagues, got involved in that. I absolutely loved that, and I travelled all over the world. Got lots of aviation fuel. Went all over the place, particularly Jamaica, on an investigation over there. I've got 2 scholarships to uni whilst I was in. I did a Bachelor of Science degree in forensic psychology, with mathematics. I found out I liked maths, and I retired at the age of 48. And you can see from my visual appearance that I'm no longer 48, but I'm still working and still, as they say, loving it. Not as much as you're going to love it with Freshers Week, though. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a look very briefly at history and background. What is policing about? That's so important to know. And of course, it does change over the years. The skills needed to undertake that job, that profession, the most enjoyable bits and the challenges. What did I get out of it? And that was a lot. And then I'm going to give you a detective training school lesson for a bit of fun. And then we can look at other careers within the police service where whatever degree you get will be good currency. And the policing family is getting bigger and bigger with things such as analysts, particularly on the counter-terrorist command. Analysts are as important as the investigators themselves. And then I'm going to talk to you about a thing. It's a bit of a life lesson. It's called controlling the controllables. And I learned that from a guy called Dr. Steve Ball. And hopefully it will take a bit of stress away from you in the next 3 years, if it is 3 years, your course. So, background. Born in London, my father was a police officer. I had an unremarkable performance at primary and secondary school. And it wasn't until I got into the police service that my reporting sergeant really took me under his wing. I went back to what was known as evening classes then. I did a few qualifications, and that stood me in really good stead. When I was 16, I left the UK and I worked in France till I was 18 when I applied successfully to join the Met. And I was promoted at a very young age, probably too young on reflection, in 1981 to sergeant. Promoted inspector in 1990. I had a glorious almost 10 years as a DS, which I absolutely loved. Lots of different roles I undertook. And I was promoted to DCI in 1997. And I really thought at that point I'd arrived because it's still an operational post. And I loved working with 140 men and women. And you see in the top right-hand side there, not that I've ever worn it. In fact, I'm looking around to see if I can see my long service medal. I only wore it once, and that's when it was presented. So what is policing all about in my humble view now? It's about one thing and one thing only, and that is community. I don't know whether you agree, but I think that the police service has drifted away from what it was formed to do, and that is to be a community resource. Work in the community, everything really does need to start from that point. Skills, teamwork. If you want to work on your own, that's absolutely fine. You know, we do work a lot on our own behind a PC. If you want to do that, the police service is not for you. The ability to be able to talk to people, that's called communication at every single level. As in my case, that might be someone that you've arrested right the way through. I had to address Her Majesty the Queen once, which I'll tell you about one of these days. Gather, handle, store all relevant material, statements, forensic evidence, make sure there's good continuity. Observation skills, really important. I think that my observation skills were certainly heightened when I was in the Met. Report writing skills. Do you know, I take this into secondary schools, would you believe, into English departments to say, look, this is why you're being taught English language, because if you're briefing solicitors or Crown Prosecution Service and barristers, you really do need to have good report writing skills. Attention to detail, very, very important. And your ability, particularly as a detective, to think outside the box. That means to just think around different parallels, you know, try and come up with some innovative strategies to solve crime, particularly serious crime, and to conduct interviews with both witnesses and suspects. And there's a lot to go with that. And the codes of practice and the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984 command that, and you breach that to your own detriment. In fact, only 2 weeks ago, I was doing some PACE, Police and Criminal Evidence interviews with a couple of detectives, and it was a brilliant interview until they breached a major part of police inadvertently. And of course, I said, and it's like your degree, make your mistakes in your degree. So it doesn't matter as long as you learn from that. And courtroom testimony skills. I would like £1, my friends, for every time I've given evidence. And that was a lot because I decided to get in the arena where the stakes are high, particularly if someone's being tried for drug trafficking, serious sexual offences or murder. The penalties are exactly the same. That's life imprisonment. So they're going to rigorously test the evidence. And a real positive attitude and tenacity. Do you know, I would go back in the police service tomorrow. They wouldn't have me, but I would take the same tenacity that I apply to my business, and I've run 2 businesses now, that I did when I was in the police service. The most enjoyable bits is graduating both. This sounds so big-headed, but it just shows the distance you can travel quite quickly in the police service. I graduated both top student in the uniform branch and at the detective training school. People still rip me for it. And I got this book, and you can see how far back that goes to 1976. I worked with a government minister to help draft some legislation, and that's what is currently, or was the predecessor to, the Proceeds of Crimes Act. Yeah, the Home Office minister was a guy called David Mellor. Worked in Jamaica and the USA. The best and saddest case was in summer of 1985 that I had to investigate a case of grievous bodily harm, and some serious wounds were inflicted by two Q80 princesses, and the diplomacy and the sentiment was running very, very high. So I had to be very, very diplomatic with that particular case, and also really looking after the 2 poor women victims in that case. Looking after staff, yeah, hey, I wasn't the greatest detective, wasn't the greatest Poirot, but what I loved doing was motivating my staff to get the best out of them. Challenges of police work, I think it would be incorrect to me if I said that all parts of police work are a joy all the time. They're not. And these are the things: long hours, you've got to be prepared to do that. I think the demand on officers these days is not as long as it used to be. It can be detrimental to family life. You know, even if you're home and you're investigating a case and you're watching Corrie, you're still sitting there investigating the case. It can be awfully frustrating. You know, I'm quite mild-mannered, and sometimes as a senior officer, when we weren't getting somewhere fast, there can be a temptation to become frustrated and lose your temper. Lots of court cases. People say, well, you know, I garner and harness as much evidence as I possibly can, take it to the Crown Prosecution Service, and then it's a matter for the jury. Well, is it? In murder cases, I did, and perhaps wrongly, take them seriously. And if I lost a case, I would have a major introspective look at why that case was lost. But I'd do it all over again. What did I get out of it? Huge, huge friendship. Some people say, oh, well, you lose all your mates when you leave or when you join. That's absolutely not true. I made some fantastic friends, particularly in the legal profession, in the press, Her Majesty's Customs and Excise, some really good people, and victims, of course. Transferable skills. Once you leave, you are taught to be on time, you're taught to be respectful, you're taught to be able to communicate properly. In my case, you're taught to manage at different levels, and you can transfer those skills into all sorts of things. One of the things I did when I left, I was head of education for Her Majesty's Prison Service, and had the Met not trained me in the way they did, I wouldn't have got that opportunity. Highly employable when you come out. You can see I'm a certain age now, but I still enjoy working because I have a passion for it, for reasons I explained earlier on. I became a well-rounded individual. My politics changed. I'm not going to go into that, but I had a particularly political view when I went in. And when I looked at poverty, inequality, and everything else that goes with it, my politics changed. I loved project management skills. I accrued those on the way, and I got a qualification in that. And as I said, the police, and I do thank the Met for this, is they sent me on 2 university courses and other training which I considered world class. And that is when I'm delivering to new detectives, I try and replicate that and make it world class, giving them a huge educational dividend if I can. So just for a bit of fun, that's enough about me. Let's just have a look at this. And this is what detectives are taught. It's a lesson in murder. So these are the ingredients, if you like, and at each case or each juncture of these 5 statements, there are a lot of case law that you need to be aware of, particularly as lawyers and indeed as a detective. So murder is committed. We've gone down this Americanism of homicide. It's murder. It's committed when a person unlawfully kills another human being. That it's got to be another viable human being under the Queen's peace. In other words, when we're not at war. So if we're at war, the government kind of licenses you to go abroad and kill people, and that is not unlawful. With malice aforethought, that is known as lots of other things. Planning, that's one thing. Mens rea, you've got to be able to have that's a Latin expression for guilty knowledge. So there we are, mens rea. So sentencing in 1965, I think the last hanging in this country was at HMP Manchester in 1958, and there was a moratorium, and then eventually it was abolished. But a convicted person must be sent to prison for life. Now, how much they do in prison these days is a matter for the trial judge. So tariffs, you can see here, 2 or more persons. These are the tariffs that judges will tend to stick to. 2 or more persons, murder involving a child, any sexual or sadistic connotation, further a religious, political or radical ideology, or killing a police officer or prison officer whilst that police officer or prison officer was acting in the execution of their duty. And you've probably heard these. That is a whole life order if they're aged 21 or over. That technically means that they spend the rest of their life in prison. And then you can see there's other sorts of tariffs right the way down to a murder committed by a person under 18 years, starts at 12. And in fact, I've done some research around looking at sentencing for young people under 18, and it's disproportionately high compared to the adult population that are sentenced for similar offences. This used to be known in the police service as a K&R, a knowledge and reasoning. So basically, you're given a set of circumstances. So I'm going to read this through to you. You can stop and start this as you want. Ray is 26 years of age and works on a fish counter in a large department store. His common law wife, Quirk, works at the same store on the checkout tills and is 7 months pregnant. Ray is at work when he accidentally overhears 2 colleagues talking about Quirk having an affair with Hughes, who is Ray's supervisor. So having heard this, he decides that Quirk is carrying Hughes's baby and not his. He listens to the conversation and hears that Quirk and Hughes have been seen kissing each other in a nearby pub called the Fox. So Ray decides that he will catch Quirk and Hughes at the pub and kill them both, and in the process, kill the unborn child. It's important to say here that the offence of murder, mens rea, the guilty knowledge or the guilty act, is only mental at the moment. There has to be the other part, Latin expression actus reus, that is the guilty act, which we'll come to right now. Ray contacts a criminal associate and obtains a revolver to commit the crime. Quirk tells Ray that she's going out for a drink with some friends, which is a lie. Ray pretends that he's not bothered, but an hour after Quirk has left, he loads the revolver, preparatory acts, and drives to the Fox, intending to kill Quirk and Hughes if he finds them together. Ray runs into the pub and sees Quirk and Hughes sitting together in a small alcove. He walks up to the couple and points the revolver at Hughes, saying, I hope she was to die for, because that's exactly what you're going to do. So Ray shoots Hughes in the head, killing him instantly. He points the revolver at Quirk's stomach, and she tries to move away as Ray pulls the trigger again for a second time. Quirk is shot in her left side, causing her serious injury, but not as Ray has intended, her death. A murder incident room is set up. DCs Hexel and Farrell are seconded to the inquiry, and this is the first time either officer has been part of a murder investigation. And after the first briefing, they're driving to see a possible witness, and they have a discussion during the journey about the incident. The officers make a number of comments during the conversation, so I want you to answer these comments, bearing in mind the background and the ingredients I've given you to murder, not manslaughter, and provide reasons for your answers where appropriate. So DC Hexel said, if Ray is found guilty of this, he'll definitely get life. Is DC Hexel right, yes or no? Does the judge have a discretion regarding sentence for an offence of murder, yes or no? DC Farrell says, why did they bother saying unlawfully kills? Surely all killing is unlawful. What does the term unlawful actually mean? Give an example where killing someone might be lawful. And thirdly, DC Hexel says he'd get done for murder of Hughes and the attempted murder of Quirk. Is DC Hexel right in relation to Hughes, yes or no? And is he right in relation to Quirk, yes or no? What is the required mens rea for that offence? So you can do what you like now. Obviously, I'm recording this, so you can turn it off briefly and then come back to the questions. So let's run through those. So the first one, question number one, DC Hexel said, if Ray is found guilty of this, he'll definitely get life. Is DC Hexel right, yes or no? The answer is, as we talked about, the answer is yes. Does the judge have a discretion regarding the sentence for an offence of murder? Yes, he does, and we saw that tariff. DC Farrell said, why did they bother saying unlawfully kills? Surely all killing is unlawful. What does the term unlawfully kills actually mean? And give an example where killing someone might be lawful. Well, any act that someone perpetrates on the other, unlawful act where that person dies without the mens rea or malice aforethought is manslaughter. But so it's any unlawful act which results in the death of someone, but that's not murder. There needs to be malice aforethought. So give an example when killing someone might be lawful. Well, when I was sworn in as a constable during my training, I was issued with a police truncheon, which between you and I hardly ever carried because it was difficult to chase after someone and it was a pain carrying it in this long sort of pocket. But if I was arresting someone in the course of my duty and I struck that person and they died, and the CPS would apply 2 tests, was it reasonable and was it necessary? And if those 2 tests are passed, that is a lawful killing. It's the same when a police officer shoots someone dead. The last question here, get done for the murder of Hughes and the attempted murder of Quirk. Yes, all the ingredients, in my view, are there to put in front of a jury in relation to Hughes, and certainly the attempted murder of Quirk. If he had killed the unborn baby, that would have been manslaughter and not murder, because the person killed has to be viable. In other words, they have to be born. What is the required mens rea for this offence? We saw the preparatory acts. We saw the verbalisation in the pub. All the ingredients are there. Other careers, we're coming towards the back end of this now. So other careers within the police service. So there is an officer, SOCO, Scenes of Crimes Officer, PCSO, which is you're given some powers. That's a police constable support officer, vehicle maintenance special, all of these things you won't do, intelligence administration, quite a lot. So what I want to finish off with is what I call controlling the controllables. You can see my age now. One of my favourite groups is Supertramp, virtually now defunct. But can you see there's a guy walking across that tightrope there, and the caricature here is that someone is not caricature. The thing is that someone's trying to cut that rope. So if you're walking from A to B in life, how can you control the controllables and not get too stressed? And it's something you can control some things and you can't control others. So the things you can control your success in anything you do, because you can control that. So I'm using this word over and over again, but control the things you can, and it will take away a certain amount of stress. I controlled within reason where I worked in the police. I controlled my education within the police service. And I will say to you, enjoy Freshers Week, enjoy your career, and never, never give up. So if you want to get in touch with me, if you want any advice, I probably can't give it these days, then what I suggest you do is to contact us. And I'll stop sharing now and say, as always, the University of the Law is a fantastic client of ours. We do a lot of work together. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Enjoy your degree and enjoy your life. So this is former Steve Gaskin, former Steve Gaskin, ex-DCI Gaskin, signing off. Thank you so much for listening.